Good Friday morning, and welcome to the newest edition of GikesGotGame on the River's Edge. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com. I'm your host, Matt Geika. I'll be with you flying solo for the next hour. No one wanted to be with me this morning. No, actually, I did have a full show planned, so I figured I'll go without guests for this week on this January 13th, 2017. Great to be live with you on this Friday morning as the city of Pittsburgh prepares for another Steelers playoff game. Of course, that leads to some casual dress on Friday, typically, depending on where you might work, depending on the leeway that you might have in that area. You're probably wearing some sort of black and gold. And one of the few times I find in our modern society that we can get together and all feel and think the same way. And that's what I enjoy. That is the one aspect of football I might enjoy the most, is that it happens once a week, and especially once playoff time comes around. These opportunities are appreciated, and in this part of the world, we know how to celebrating and get together for a Steelers playoff game. Pittsburgh and Kansas City, 1 p.m. on Sunday. I will be talking about that a little bit, but I'm also going to be taking a full lap around the Pittsburgh sports world today, this morning, because over the past 8 days, I've had the opportunity to cover and write about the Steelers, the Penguins, and the Pirates. And I even made the journey down to Bradenton, Florida for a couple of days this week. And yes, I know that you hate me probably for being able to get out of the cold weather, but hey, I came back on Friday, or no, this is Friday. I came back on Thursday, and the weather up here was great, at least for 2 or 3 hours, and then it started to pour rain, and it dropped from the 50s to the 30s, but didn't feel like that much of a difference when I got off the plane at Pittsburgh International. Later on in this program, I'll give you a peek behind the curtain of breaking news in this media business. I stumbled into something. Well, I shouldn't say that, but inadvertently or unexpectedly fell into some news on Thursday night while I was very busy doing something else, so I'll tell you how I managed that and how that type of thing does happen occasionally in this business, as I've discovered. I've covered the Pirates for DKPittsburghSports.com as the lead beat reporter for about a year and a half, about as long as I've had this gig here at River's Edge, in fact, dating back to the middle of the 2015 season, the 2015 summer. So that was interesting, to say the least. I'll get into that in our second segment today. And also into the future, commiserating with fans from a different market. And I've talked frequently on this program about my background as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, Pittsburgh sports fan, pardon me, generally, Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, and a little bit of Pitt too, and how that informs my coverage, how that informs my perspective to serving the Pittsburgh sports fan. Well, I will say that I empathize with San Diego Chargers fans today, even though I will contend that their move to Los Angeles, as was announced Thursday, isn't quite as bad as some other notable franchise moves we've seen in the past, including one right in the Steelers' own division. You might remember that one back in the 90s. Finally, on this week's program, the usual features will be sprinkled in. Ban the cliche. This one is just one word. Can a cliche be one word? I think it can be, and I'll elaborate later. And the final number. The Penguins had a remarkable streak come to an end. I'll tell you numerically why it was significant Thursday night in Ottawa, as things did not go their way in the second half of a back-to-back situation. Before I get into today's opening argument, though, you can find me on Twitter at Matt Geika. You can see it right on the screen if you're watching on Facebook Live at the moment. And remember, you can find our Facebook Live broadcast both on Facebook itself and on our website, riversedgepgh.com/live. But we are broadcasting on the stream. It will be available on the podcast page, too. So many different ways you can access the program. As is usually the case when I'm on live on Friday mornings, Brian Crawford is producing, and Brian knows all about lack of sleep. I'm fighting through that at the moment right now, not to make excuses, but I'll lay that one out there for you if I stumble over a word or two. My wife, Jillian, and I, who's been on this program, we are rearing a young child at home, and his schedule at night is a little different from most adults' schedules. So some interrupted sleep. I got to bed late last night anyway, and lack of sleep can cut both ways, I find. Sometimes it can make you flat incoherent, which may occur over the course of this next hour. Other times it can focus you, though, and, well, especially when you have the help of Mr. Caffeine here, it can put you on a path to enlightenment and truth-telling, and that's the way I feel, at least this morning, the latter. I hope that is the case, in fact, as we get into the program. And I touched upon it just a moment ago, what variety I've experienced over the past week. And this even applies for outside the Pittsburgh sports universe. I had the privilege to do 7 games of play-by-play for midget major hockey up in Troy, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit. Was the broadcaster for 14 hours, almost consecutively. Had about 15 minutes between games, 3 17-minute periods each in 7 games, a couple of overtimes, 2 shootouts. I wanted to test my vocal stamina and also mental fortitude there to try to at least commit to memory for a short period of time. Numbers and names and all of that. I call it a mental and physical marathon. It was a ton of fun, but it kicked off my week. That was last Friday. That's why I did the show early. You might remember last week here in the studio on Thursday morning. So there was that, a full day of activity in Michigan. And then Saturday, back to Pittsburgh, back to PPG Paints Arena to cover Penguins practice, and with the added bonus of it being the reunion of the 2009 Penguins Stanley Cup champion team. So chatted with Ruslan Fedotenko, Hal Gill, Matt Cook, Matthew Garon, the backup goalie, Eric Goddard, Craig Adams were all there too, Pascal Dupuis, and of course the current Penguins who were on that team, Chris Kunitz, Sidney Crosby, Marc-Andre Fleury, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang. So that was not your typical practice, and I was not complaining about that. Usually you have to work to generate a storyline. That was not the case last Saturday. Then the Penguins returned from their week-long break, their bye week, if you will, and played the Lightning, the Tampa Bay Lightning, their Eastern Conference final foe from last season at home. That was Sunday night, right after the Steelers got done playing the Dolphins. So there was an intermingling even there with the Pens opening the doors of PPG Paints Arena a half an hour early to allow fans to watch the end of the Steelers game on the big video board. So that had the feel of Pittsburgh's biggest sports bar on Sunday night. So some Steelers, some Penguins, and then I jetted down to Bradenton where I touched base with the man who's engineering the show right now on his Monday program. He gave me a hard time for being in Florida, but it was instructive to be down there. And once I got down to Florida, and perhaps this is just the mini-camp atmosphere for the Pirates overall, but generally, the atmosphere surrounding hockey and baseball very different. And hockey is it has a tempo to it. It has, particularly in the media sphere, where you're shuffled from the dressing room back to the media room to talk to the head coach, and then back upstairs to write your story or shoot your video or whatever you may have to do. It's so different from the baseball experience. And for me, having done both in such a short span, it really hit home. And in baseball, it's so casual. It's so slow-paced. You can stand around. You wait for players to be available both before and after games. And in the case of minicamp this week down at Pirate City, you are there by yourself. No PR supervision, so you can have long conversations with players and feel like you get to know them a little bit better. Whereas hockey has more of an assembly line feel, or at least the way the Penguins do it. You're in and you're out, and players are available, and then that's it. So you have to prioritize your time, make sure you're efficient in all your motions, and much like playing hockey, I think you have to be quick. Whereas with baseball has that languid pace, the pastoral game, as they say. It translates over to the media sphere. And football is somewhere in between. Football, when you do cover that, whether it be a game or a practice, whether it be Heinz Field or somewhere else, or at the Rooney Sports Complex on the south side, there are so many players, so you have your choice. It's the opposite of hockey in that way. It's somewhere between baseball is somewhere between hockey and football, but then football has 53 men on the roster plus 10-man practice squad, plus assistant coaches if you're fortunate enough to get in touch with them. So there is really a different discipline to covering each one of these sports. And what variety I was able to experience over the past week. And just want to say that as someone who grew up in the area, I earnestly appreciate the chance to do this and to spread my wings. And as part of a new expanded role at DKPittsburghSports.com, I'm able to jump around and not be pigeonholed. And I know my psyche responds to that type of variety, and I do try to make ties in between the different sports when I cover them. And in reality, there isn't a huge difference in the very basics of covering these sports. And a good interview question is a good interview question. And breaking down a game and finding the one or two key points is a discipline that also translates over. But when you do go through a week like I just did, and you compound that with a travel down to Florida and go to a very informal mini camp atmosphere at Pirate City in Bradenton, then you really do realize how different these games are. And I think all of us in town here, we grew up with the three of them, and one just bleeds right over into the other. But the differences stand out when you go through a week like I just did. And case in point, on Sunday against the Lightning, the Penguins finish up the game. You have to rush down from the press box at PPG Paints Arena. Make sure you get to the dressing room in time for Penn's PR to open it up and ensure that you don't miss anybody. You're jumping around from player to player. There's a little bit of frenzy, maybe panic in the atmosphere. And then down at Pirates minicamp especially, and this applies for spring training too, which is also quite casual. Even during games, players leave in the middle of games and get changed and go home. And then you can go down there and talk to them in the middle of games too. So that's a very disconcerting, disorienting type of a situation compared to what you're used to during the regular season. But you almost have too much time. I would argue you do have too much time in baseball. There's a lot of wasted time there, standing around waiting for players, and you never quite know if you're going to be able to get a guy or if someone's going to be available. And whereas in hockey, you know right away. So there are benefits and drawbacks because, like I said, you can get plenty of insider material, plenty of one-on-one opportunities in baseball compared to hockey, which has that scrum feel. And when I talk about a scrum, I'm alluding to the group of reporters that moves around from place to place. And in many cases, that doesn't lead to the best type of candor from the athletes or coaches for that matter. But you rarely ever catch a coach one-on-one in major professional sports, I have learned in this gig. However, the players, at times you can get them one-on-one, and they are better, as most of us would be, more natural and relaxed in a one-on-one setting, a more of a conversation, although with me holding this phone in your face and recording things. So that tends to mitigate it at times, unless you're talking about a truly special athlete who takes pride in his candor, his or her candor, whether it be Ian Cole of the Penguins, Jared Hughes of the Pirates stands out in that regard. But you'd always rather get someone one-on-one, and it's just not possible in hockey most times. And so that's the one drawback, I would say, one drawback that I would see. And you would think with the Steelers, which is a different beast altogether because of all the national media presence, especially this time of the year. And I've been in the locker room leading up to big games and nationally televised games like this one coming up on our broadcast partner, WPXI, by the way, on on Sunday afternoon. But you have presence from ESPN, NFL Network for each and every practice, let alone games. So it's very tough to get exclusives in that setting. However, with as many players as there are, you can mix it up and you can get different voices in your stories and in your videos or whatever you're trying to produce. So it takes, I think, a quick mind to succeed in this business, an adaptable mind, and I really appreciate the work of the radio professionals like the folks over at 93.7 The Fan who go from one thing to the next. Eric Hagman, my broadcast partner on Peters Township Hockey, I'll give him a shout first of all, one of the reporters over there and one of the update anchors. I'm talking about the guys who put in the hard yards, who do the work, who go from the Steelers to the Penguins to the Pirates, to Jeff Hathorn, the sports director over there. I always marvel at his ability to ask pertinent questions after he parachutes in to, say, Pirates spring training, or goes from the Penguins to the Steelers over the course of one day. It's not easy. You're trying to be informed and be educated on all the storylines on a given day, and there's only so much mental bandwidth that each of us has. So as I go through this job, and now into my third calendar year, but getting close to 2 full years at DKPittsburghSports.com, that's an ability to go back and forth that I appreciate more and more. And as I said, growing up in this area, I don't take any of this for granted, folks. So I think you can assure yourself that I am enjoying it. And even though some of the travel can be difficult, quick turnaround from Sunday night at PPG Paints to Monday morning in Bradenton, Florida, and all the flight logistics that go in between, there is a fun element to it, but also a challenge in keeping your energy up and also just getting from place to place on time. So all that mixes in too. But unlike some reporters or media commentators out there, I don't ever deny that I was a fan, and there are still fan-like elements to my coverage because I try to keep them there in order to understand what fans want to see and want to hear. So that's all mixed in with what I try to do, and I'm thrilled to be able to have the chance to continue to have weeks like this. Maybe never a week exactly like this one where you have football, baseball, and hockey overlapping, but taking a lap around the Pittsburgh sports world is a rare opportunity, and I had a blast doing it, and I appreciate all the chances that I have gotten to be a little bit different in this role and spread my wings and hopefully serve you, the listener in this role, or the reader on our website. Let's take a step away for just a moment. Let's hear some local music on the River's Edge. And by the way, you can find the Millvale Music Minute as we work our way toward the Millvale Music Festival. Tom Benoit talked about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. That's available on our podcast page, riversedgepgh.com, as is this show each and every week. This is GikesGotGame. We're talking Pittsburgh sports, and in fact, we'll go a little bit more general, just the mechanics behind breaking news and how that can happen in this industry. More of a peek behind the curtain in the media business coming up next on the River's Edge.
Stay clear of the streets, for God's sake! The timid and the fearful drivers are every bit as bad as the aggressive drivers. Nobody in Pittsburgh knows what a right-of-way is. I go down the road and I just sing this song, the gas is on the right, the gas is on the right, hi-ho the highway, yo! The gas is on the right.
Get educated with Brian Crawford, live Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m. here on the River's Edge.
Welcome back to GikesGotGame. I'm your host, Matt Geica, flying solo, spreading my wings like an eagle, and delivering alternative Pittsburgh sports talk. At least that's the idea. Thanks to Brian Crawford for the engineering efforts early on this Friday morning. And I want to get this in. Team USA. This is my mug from a trip to Colorado Springs a few years back, and the Olympic Training Center, which is really awesome if you get an opportunity to go up there. And I mean up there, obviously, in the case of the Springs, which I think is 7,000 feet above sea level. And there is something called the incline on which Olympic athletes train. You're essentially walking up the side of a cliff. They've laid down railroad ties as steps, which are massively apart compared to your typical staircase. So this isn't exactly rocky climbing the stairs of the Philadelphia Art Museum. These are big strides, and I've gone up it a couple of times. That would be difficult here at sea level, let alone at 7,000 feet. So I see why that is such a great place to train. But I've gone far afield. I didn't want to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the United States' big win in the World Junior Championship. You might recall last week I brought up the hockey is Canada's game cliche, and I banned that, I think for good reason, as later that same night up in Montreal, the United States juniors defeated the Canadians in a shootout. I know, a shootout's not the best way to decide a big game like that, but they played 3 intense periods of 20 minutes apiece and then a 10-minute overtime. Still no decision. I don't have an issue at that point with the shootout. Maybe you can kill me if you want for that, but the only complaint I might have is let's just do 4-on-4 for 10 minutes after 60 of 5-on-5, because the 4-on-4 typically leads to more open ice and more chances, and I think that's been the Olympic format in the past. In fact, I know it was, because in 2010, when Sidney Crosby scored the golden goal for Team Canada, it wasn't a 4-on-4 situation in overtime. He took the pass from Jerome McGinley and beat Ryan Miller between the legs, and that's one of the many shining moments in Sidney Crosby's career. But I digress. The third World Junior Gold for Team USA this decade. 2010, John Carlson, currently at the Washington Capitals, scored the overtime winner that time. 2013, well, when I say 2010, 2013, it's kind of like when you talk about this being the 2016 NFL season. It really isn't now. We're in 2017, but you know what I mean. But in 2013, it was really memorable for all the Pittsburgh-born players who were on the World Junior team. You had Brandon Saad of the Columbus Blue Jackets now. John Gibson, the goaltender for the Anaheim Ducks. Vincent Trocheck of the Florida Panthers. JT Miller, New York Rangers. And Riley Barber as well, who grew up in this area and was the son of a former Washington Capital. So all those Penguins connections, or not Penguins connections, those players did grow up watching the Penguins, but Pittsburgh connections, Pittsburgh hockey connections were relevant in 13. That was fun, and that, I think, was the year I really got into the World Junior Championships. And it is such a frantic tournament, high-end skill for sure, high-end skill for days on the ice, but also these players at 20 and under aren't quite as polished as the pros, so you never know what might happen. And case in point, the gold medal game last Thursday that I was just talking about. Canada takes a 2-0 lead and a 4-2 lead. The U.S. comes back both times, the second time in very quick succession, very World Junior-esque turn of momentum. So here's to you, Team USA, with your victory on foreign soil, much like the World Cup was in 1996, that huge upset for USA over Canada. And also I mentioned the 2010 World Juniors. That was up in Saskatoon, which sounds like a junior hockey city if I ever heard one. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. John Carlson, the hero there. And it was more of a team effort, to use a terrible sports cliche this time around, but it was the truth, at least up there. Okay, story time on GikesGotGame as we move into the second segment. And again, my name is Matt Geica. I'm a reporter and analyst in an all-around role now at DKPittsburghSports.com, but you'll see me plenty on the Pirates. I'll go down to spring training for a couple of stints in February and March. Spring training extra long this year, as if it needed extended. Now 7 weeks instead of 6. Oh well, we will endure, and we'll make it happen for you. But also plenty of coverage of the Penguins and the Steelers. I've done back-to-back Matt Stats features on the Steelers, including this week why I think they should be at least slight favorites. I don't care about what Vegas has to say, but I think statistically speaking, analytically speaking, they should be slight favorites at the Chiefs. So you can check that out at DKPittsburghSports.com for as cheaply as $1.50. That's $1.50 a month. But I want to take you back to last night, Thursday night. I was on the campus of Duquesne University, and I went there for a year, and I wish I had gone there now because I might have stuck it out at Duquesne, considering how far their television program and radio program has come along. But working on a project, a TV project, that's as far as I'll go, with a good friend of mine, Dan Kingerski of 93.7 The Fan and PittsburghPostgame.com. So we'll see if that gets off the ground, but I was indisposed at the time. I couldn't really have access to a laptop or go online, and then I get a text message from someone in the know, we'll call it that. I'll protect the source here, do the journalist thing, that Jared Hughes had just signed a 1-year contract with the Pirates, thus avoiding the arbitration process for well, I said 1 year, but $2.825, very specific, $million. A little bit of a raise for Jared going into his 7th season, I want to say, as a Pirate. Well, you know what? It will be parts of 7 seasons coming up here in 2017. So he's been around for a long time, very stealthily. But I get that text just as cameras are about to roll, and so I have to put the halt on the whole proceedings and quickly post something to our website from my phone. Thank goodness for that, at least. I had that chance, and instead of having to run away to a laptop like I might have in the past. So thank you, modern technology, which can be a gift and a curse in this spot because, of course, I'm expected to cover news no matter where I am or what time of the day it is or what I'm up to. And so there you have it. That's how news breaks at times in this industry. I think there is the perception from the outside that reporters are working their sources feverishly, but a lot of times you just make relationships, and like I have with my source here that I was talking about, and they come to you with the news, and you're not in control of the situation. And that is what so often happens, whether it be in sports journalism or news journalism, general journalism. You find out as a reporter because someone wants you to know. And you could call this the whistleblower phenomenon. You could call it whatever you may like. But so many times when information gets out and you wonder, well, how did that get out? How did the reporter get this? It's because of relationships that are built. But more often than not, it's a power play. Someone wants to change the dynamic of, say, a negotiation, or they want to get it out. They want to do a favor, maybe to a reporter they like. So thank you to my source last night. I think that was the motivation behind that. I'm just so darn likable. Maybe that's the reason why. That's probably not the case, but I can at least pretend that it is so. However, my point stands. I got that because someone wanted me to have it, and it's not necessarily your digging or even your meeting with Deep Throat in the parking garage to break the Watergate scandal if you're Woodward and Bernstein and chronicling this whole situation back in the 70s. That could be the stereotypical meeting with a source that so many people have in mind these days. But you know, these phones that I was talking about, like I said, I just got a little text on my phone, and text messaging can be a good and a bad thing. I think it's still good to chat with someone over the phone from time to time. Clearly, I believe in the power of the spoken word, or I would not be doing this broadcast right now. So I like to have that chance to communicate as we were originally intended as human beings. We didn't write initially, although that was pretty quickly on the docket for the caveman back in the day, chiseling on the wall of a cave. I guess that's the original version of the text message, which was left behind for us to discover many, many years in the future. And you know what? They did emojis too, with pictures of animals and hunting and all that stuff. So maybe we were a little bit ahead of our time. Maybe the caveman was ahead of its time in that way. But verbal communication was the first way to communicate. However, that is not how this stuff works. And I like it, at least from a reporter's standpoint, because you get it, if not necessarily on the record, but you have the exact quote right here on the phone, and you don't have to remember what was said, and you don't have to paraphrase. You can just put those words right into your story if you are writing like I was last night. And not that I used any kind of direct quote, but I got the dollar figure right away because it was on text, and I didn't have to scramble to find something to write with. So technology has changed this profession so much, but at some levels, it really hasn't. And if someone on the inside wants someone on the outside, like me, to know something, then that ball's in their court. And it is a helpless feeling at times, but all you can do as a reporter, you hear athletes and coaches talk about controlling what you can control. All you can do as a reporter is put yourself in this person's mind. Hey, I'd like to have that story if you're willing to share it in the future, or some other situation that you want to be made public. I'm here for you. So that's what is really fun about having this platform, is that people on the inside see that as a thing they're interested in spreading the word. They see you as a conduit, and that's what this job is, really. Whether I'm interviewing someone on the record or off, or I'm getting background information or something that I can use as a direct quote. I'm a go-between, and I've always enjoyed that, communicating and distilling what is said from the newsmakers for the people who are, in this case, on our website, paying for the news, or, in your case, listening and trying to get some insight into the profession. So a scrambling moment for me, maybe not the most pleasant setting, as I was very busy at the time to get that news, but it was also thrilling. You get that adrenaline rush, and that's part of the reason why so many of us have a hard time working in other industries after journalism, because there is that immediacy to it. And even though we get bashed and you hear a lot of things about lamestream media these days, and fake news is a thing that you hear a lot about, I can assure you last night was not fake news from me in that regard with Jared Hughes. And hey, I even had it, I thought, exclusively for at least a couple of seconds before that pesky John Heyman of MLB Network, who seems to get everything in a lot of cases, had this story out there too. So, oh well, small victories. And even though the national guy picked it up as well, you can feel like you achieved something and got something done as it was served to me on a silver platter. Let's take a step away on GikesGotGame, recharge for the third segment. We're going to ban a cliche, everyone's favorite part of GikesGotGame every week. At least it's my favorite part to come up with and rack my brain and figure out what annoys me. That's an easy thing to do. And I'll tell you what got my goat, to use another cliche, this week in the sports media. This is the River's Edge.
Hey, this is Mike Sasson. Have you been searching for something to do with your pathetic life? Guess what? This ain't it. But it'll kill about an hour. It's the Mike Sasson Show, starting 10 a.m. on July 19th, going to 11. It's going to be a lot of fun here on the River's Edge, a new kind of radio.
Back on GikesGotGame. Thank you for listening to the River's Edge, or watching, as it were, on Facebook Live and on our live page, riversedgepgh.com/live. We're broadcasting from the Millvale Studios in the land of artists. We try to achieve some sort of audio art here on a daily basis. We've got talk shows coming out of our ears these days, and we added another podcast, or another show, if you will, with the Millvale Music Minute. And I want to bring in Brian Crawford, my engineer, and of course he hosts River Talk multiple times per week on this network.
10 a.m. today.
Oh, there you have it. So you're getting ready to go. And
That's right.
I'll try not to bump you. I promise I'll be off the air here in about 15 minutes, so you can fully prepare for your program. Off the air just now, you and I were talking about, well, a couple of things. Number one, how you were turned on to the benefits of of passing the winter solstice, and that made me remember my friend's dad, back when we were younger, used to call the winter solstice Moral Victory Day, because you have gotten past the darkening time of the year, and now, even though, of course, it's freezing out and it feels like the dead of winter, it is getting lighter each and every day. So I think we can get you on board with that cult. I think.
I'm a big fan of that. I found out about that just this year, actually. I was hosting a Christmas open mic out at Hambones, and basically it was kind of like a storyline where I was the Grinch and the musicians had to tell me Christmas stories to thaw my frozen heart. And that was the one story that really did it. That really brought me around. I don't know if I'm pro-Christmas, but I was definitely more open to winter holidays when I thought, the sun's coming back. I love the sun. That's great.
Well, the reason that there is Christmas at that time of the year, it's not because baby Jesus was born literally in the winter. We don't really know when that blessed event occurred, but it was based around a pagan holiday, the winter solstice holiday.
It was, and there are some who believe, and they can kind of look to some things in Scripture to place actually the birth of Christ in the spring. There's a lot of people who believe that.
Yeah, it would be pretty cold to have a baby outside, even in the Middle East. So.
Exactly.
Often thought that. Now, like me, Brian, you like to take down certain things in culture that you find are getting tired, and for me, ban the cliche is a weekly part of the program. You posted something on your Facebook wall just 2 hours ago that I agree with. The term adulting.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's one of those words that I think the internet has helped to coin in a hurry, and it basically means being responsible, from what I understand. Adulting is hard is often how you hear that phrase used, but you've tired of it, seems
I'm tired of it, and Oxford, the gutter of dictionaries,
Oh, no.
will surely make it a word in 2017. Of that, I have no doubt.
They've been all about blessing some of these pseudo words lately, haven't they?
Oh, they've gone beyond words now. You talked about hieroglyphics. Last year,
Yeah, I
they
tried
turned the crying laughing face into a word.
Oh, that's right.
Oxford has moved below Webster, below dictionary.com, and even below Urban Dictionary in its qualifications as a document to find this information. I mean, it's awful.
Oxford, that's English. They're supposed to be, staid and tradition bound,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Prim and proper, not this rubbish, this hogwash that
Rubbish.
they're putting
That's
out.
a good
Yeah,
bit of
every
British slang. So, Brian, do you use this word before I let you go here and let you regather your thoughts? But do you use the word obviously in speech a lot? Because that's my cliche that I'd like to ban. Because you hear it so much in sports. Athletes will say, well, obviously, I want to help the team win, but such and such and such. It's so worthless as a word. Just say what you were going to say without saying obviously. If it's so obvious, maybe this is a contradiction, but you don't have to use the word obviously if it is obvious.
Yeah, I don't use it that often. Actually, I have something. If you want, I can play you something.
Yeah, you certainly can.
All right, let's see if this will work here. So it should be going.
Good afternoon.
Oh,
There you go.
Game standpoint, obviously,
They actually have a countdown on YouTube from Ben Stonium of an obviously countdown from Mike Tomlin.
see, that's where you hear Mike talking in the background. That is one of his crutch words, as we talk about in the radio business. We all have them. But obviously is one of Tomlin's, and I hear it in hockey a lot too, but I'd totally forgotten that is a Mike Tomlin thing. That's his baby.
That's
right
his
there.
word, yeah. I don't use obviously. I sometimes find myself saying absolutely
Yeah.
in response to someone in an interview. And
Just
it
as a
makes my-
validation,
yes,
yeah.
and it makes my skin crawl every time I do it. And when I'm conscious of it and I'm awake and I have a producer, I can limit the absolutelys, but when I'm trying to produce the show and I'm coming in on 1 hour of sleep, then it tends to slip in a little bit more.
Absolutely. See what I did there? Thanks, Brian, for the input. I'll go further into obviously here in the ban the cliche. And as I was saying earlier in the program, I guess one word can be a cliche if you use it in a cliched way. And I haven't looked up Oxford's definition of cliche. Maybe I will after this. However, obviously is an extraneous word in so many cases. And there is one context in which it would be legitimate in my mind. If you're talking about something that is not obvious and then you lead into something that is, that would be a nice transition word. But it's one of those words that, not just athletes, we're all guilty of it from time to time. You hear it in hockey more than anything. Someone is trying to buy time to think of something to say. And, hey, none of us are as quick-witted as we would like to be. At least I know I'm not. But obviously we can do better at thinking of ways to, heck, just take a pause. Just sit here for 1 second. That was a 1 second pause. I know it felt like a long time on the radio. But you're allowed to let it breathe, as we say in this business. It's something I work on all the time. And vocalized pauses was a part of my broadcast education at good old Marshall University, which I again represent here. I do it all the time. It tends to happen where that Kelly Green. But a professor of mine named Chuck Bailey, in that high-pitched voice of his, used to say, "Now, Matt, you don't have to say or anything like that. You can just sit there in silence." And so clearly, that has taken some time to set in. But as I get older, I realize the benefit of just taking a pause, collecting your thoughts, and not rambling out there with an obviously or an or an or a or what have you. So this week's cliche to be banned is the word obviously. And I think this one is particularly pertinent in any aspect of life, not just sports. Final break on GikesGotGame is coming your way. One more bit of local music, which we are proud to present 24/7, almost 24/7, except when we're yakking your ear off on our talk shows, here on the River's Edge at riversedgepgh.com. When I return, I'll wrap it up with the final number. The Penguins had a remarkable streak come to an end. It was bound to happen at some point, but the way it happened was with a thud and not with a whimper. I'll tell you more in just a moment.
Come on, go! It's green! Come on! Go!
God damn it, Brian. You need to calm down
I'm
with the road
sick of
rage.
these people, these assholes.
The road rage, man. You gotta calm down on the road rage.
Well, I want to get to where we're going. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to Falling Water,
Bicycle heaven.
the Mattress Factory,
Tuck Knob.
Trundle Manor. All right, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Come on,
right,
come on.
Right.
Too late now.
Right, come on.
Well, too late now. I gotta keep going. I'm not gonna sit here like some asshole.
Oh, come on, man.
All right, you're listening to the Culture Cruise. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com.
Your local Pittsburgh area museum podcast.
Yes, riversedgepgh.com, and come take a ride with us.
I will take a ride on the Culture Cruise. Again, I spoke of all the shows that we have on this network, this growing network of ours at riversedgepgh.com. That's one of them. Brian goes on the road, and as you heard, it can be quite inflammatory when he does. Reminds me of my wife a little bit. If she's listening, she knows what goes on there with her road rage. She's from Michigan. She's supposed to be a nicer, kinder, gentler driver, but that's not the case. She gets mad at anything and everything, and she saves a special level of disdain for Ohio drivers, in fact. That might just be the Michigan in her, though. Ohio doesn't like Michigan. Michigan doesn't like Ohio, and it's not just about college football, believe me. They even call Michigan the state up north, I think, in Ohio. They don't even say the word there. But getting back to Culture Cruise, it's a little bit like comedians in cars getting coffee, except we take you on a field trip and some various Pittsburgh and Western PA locations, as you heard there with Falling Water, in addition to the Mattress Factory and other places of interest here in town. I don't go on the road. Well, I could, I suppose, with this show. Maybe I will in the future, but I'm more of a homebody with GikesGotGame. Time to wrap up the show, and I said final number. I should have said final numbers, because there are two that I want to get to before we get to the end of the week, and no, I don't want to save one for next week because they're both very pertinent to right now. The first final number is 91, as in the number of games between consecutive regulation losses for your Pittsburgh Penguins before that streak ended Thursday night in Ottawa. The Penguins losing to Washington on Wednesday night. I believe that was 5-2, and then 4-1 losers to the Senators in the other national capital that is in the National Hockey League. Ottawa, of course, is what I'm talking about. And in the shadow of Parliament, the Penguins came up well short, falling behind 3-0 and losing 4-1. And for the first time since Mike Sullivan's first 4 games as Penguins coach, they have dropped back-to-back games. You might recall, or you might not, considering how much of a happy ending the 2015-16 Penguins orchestrated, but they lost their first 4 games in a row when Sullivan took over from Mike Johnston last December. And it took 91 regular season games plus 30-some-odd playoff games before they would lose 2 in regulation back-to-back again. They lost 2 in a row to the Lightning in the playoffs back-to-back, but one was in overtime, and I know that overtime isn't any different from regulation in the playoffs, but at the same time, we'll keep that distinction. We'll add those playoff games in. But just regular season hockey, so impressive with how long the season is, how difficult it is to get up for every game, especially if you're a team like the Penguins that had just climbed the mountaintop and realized that October and November and December hockey, it's important, but not quite as important as some of the stuff that you just went through. So that makes it all the more impressive for me. And so a tip of the cap, a tap of the stick to the Penguins for their streak. However, some more numbers for you. The Penguins are now 8-3 on the road. So if you want to look at it that way, below 500 with the 3 overtime or shootout losses. And they've been outscored 53-95 away from PPG Paints Arena, where they've been incredible this year. 18-2-2, the best start on home ice in franchise history in 49 seasons. in the opening 22 games of a home schedule. But the flip side is on the road, strangely impotent, and sometimes even a doormat on the road. They've been blown out several times, and some of these games have not even been close. In fact, that Wednesday night game in Washington, the 5-2 loss with an empty net goal, that was as close as they've been in most of these road losses. It's been a weird season in that way. Yes, the Penguins right near the top of the Metropolitan Division, but there are some flies in the ointment, and the road record is one of them. And finally, not that we were all waiting for it, but finally, that streak has come to an end. My other final number, though, you get a bonus final number, lucky you, on this Friday the 13th, which I'm just realizing. And not that I'm superstitious, but figured I'd throw that out there, too. That is not the other final number. The other final number is 30,000, which is the capacity for the stadium in which the Los Angeles Chargers will play their home games next year. The smallest NFL facility by far. And I was told by a good friend of mine, Jerry, on Twitter, who used to work with us at DKPittsburghSports.com as a copy editor, but Jerry, always on top of the details, said that at some point in the 1970s, the NFL passed a rule that every team had to have a stadium that seated at least 50,000. So there's some fudging of the rules here for the Spanos family, which has moved the Chargers controversially from San Diego after 55 years in San Diego, by the way. But the Chargers are moving to Los Angeles, which went from 0 NFL teams to 2 in the span of exactly a year. In fact, it was a year ago yesterday that the St. Louis Rams announced that they were moving to Los Angeles to play at the too massive Los Angeles Coliseum, as it turned out, which seats over 80, maybe even 90,000 people. That's a true Coliseum right there, built for the LA Olympics back in '84. But the Rams couldn't fill it. Part of the reason was they were maybe the worst team to watch in the NFL, along with the San Francisco 49ers this year. Boy, were they bad and boring at times. The Rams I'm talking about. Fired their coach, Jeff Fisher. Now they have company in the LA market, and reportedly, the Rams and the Chargers are going to share a stadium, a new stadium. But for now, the Chargers will play where the LA Galaxy of Major League Soccer play their games. And it would be an interesting atmosphere. I'm not opposed to that type of a thing, particularly in a market like Los Angeles where you're trying to build a fan base now. And let's not assume that everyone's going to make that drive, 1.5 to 2 hours from San Diego to LA to follow the Chargers. In fact, judging from the hostile reaction of many Chargers fans yesterday when the announcement came down, burning their gear outside of Chargers headquarters, throwing eggs at the building, there's some anger there. I don't know if those fans are going to follow the Chargers to Los Angeles, but it reminded me a lot of, in fact, the move of the Cleveland Browns when Art Modell picked him up and moved him from Cleveland to Baltimore, where they, in short order, won a Super Bowl, which made it hurt even more when the Browns came back into the NFL as an expansion team. That's right when the Ravens were peaking and winning the Super Bowl after the 2000 season. So that was a gut punch. That was worse than a gut punch. It was a shot to the nuts for the city of Cleveland, the state of Ohio, northern Ohio. And you could argue they haven't gotten over that one yet, and for good reason. I don't think the Chargers move, though. This might be a controversial point, but I don't think the Chargers move is that bad because it's almost like moving the Browns from Cleveland to Cincinnati or Cleveland to Columbus in terms of distance. It's not like they're going across the country. And I know when you root for a team, you're also rooting for your town. It wouldn't be the same if they were the Altoona Steelers, I don't think, for people. They're the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're the Pittsburgh Pirates, and so on and so forth. There's a pride that is attached to that city. And San Diego is a big city. It's not like it's Raleigh, North Carolina, where they're called the Carolina Hurricanes to embrace the region. San Diego is, I think, on last check, the 16th largest market in America. So they're bigger than cities like St. Louis, and they're bigger than a city like Pittsburgh. And they're only going to have one team now, and the team that they've had longer than the Padres, which remain the only team, major league team now in that market, the Chargers, are going to Los Angeles. And I don't know if you realize, but there is a good deal of rivalry between California cities. And Padres fans hate when Dodgers fans come down to Petco Park to invade, and it's a little bit of a big brother, little brother atmosphere. So even though the franchise will be the same, I know it'll be different for Chargers fans. So I commiserate with them. And as I talk about, I try to relate to the fan experience more than anything. And even though I've moved on to more of a professional role in following sports, at the same time, it's not quite as bad as Cleveland to Baltimore. And I think that it's easy for me to say that from the outside, not being a Chargers fan or not covering the team in San Diego. However, it will be accessible. It's not like they are going across the country or to a different state even. It's up I-5. I know it'll be a haul. It inconveniences a whole lot of people and leaves a bad taste in the mouth of San Diegans, San Diegites, whatever they're called, to quote Anchorman, because that revenue is not being funneled into San Diego anymore. But at least you can still follow the team. At least you can still reasonably get to games if you are a Chargers fan. And like I said, I'm interested in seeing how that 30,000-seat facility ends up being in terms of atmosphere for an NFL game. We haven't seen anything like it since, who knows, the 50s, the 40s, going back to the very early days of the NFL. And I know Brian wants to chime in. So
Yeah.
What do you think about this move?
Well, actually, it just reminded me of another story, and this happened in the NFL in the past. And you mentioned Baltimore the Ravens moving into Baltimore, and how the reaction of Cleveland and how that hurt that franchise or that fan base and
Hurt the city big time.
Yeah, just enfranchised them. Well, the same thing happened to Baltimore.
Exactly. Yeah,
And
before that.
there's a fantastic story, actually. There's a documentary out there. It's an ESPN 20 for 20, one of the ones.
30 for 30.
30 for 30,
Yeah, it's about the band, right?
Yes, and the
band played on or
well, not
something
only
like
did they
that.
play on, they stole the uniforms from the Colts. They refused to turn in
that
their
right?
uniforms, and they kept playing. And apparently the band was a big proponent well, they were a big factor, actually, I guess, in moving that team into Baltimore, the Ravens, in a way. The city or the state or whoever it was kind of deliberating on it, and they kind of performed outside of the chambers as kind of like a protest isn't really the right word, but to try to encourage them to allow this team to move. And it's a really fantastic story, and I thought it was a different and an interesting perspective of somebody who went through that situation and kind of screwed someone else over in the same light.
Yeah, then they were the beneficiary of
Yeah.
Modell's move from Cleveland. I'm not making light of the move. I think it would be a slap in the face, for sure. I think it has been a slap in the face for many Chargers fans, but if I had to put franchise moves in terms of devastation to the market, the Browns are always going to be right at the top. Maybe Baltimore with the Colts moving to Indianapolis in the middle of the night, mind you, which was a story in and of itself to go with your tale about the band. Yes, pro football teams used to have bands.
Well, they still do. I believe.
Some do.
Baltimore still does.
Oh, do they really?
That band still exists,
Okay,
yeah.
so there you go. They're now playing for the Ravens. So I put the Browns, the Colts, put the Chargers below them, St. Louis Rams down there, and then at the very bottom, it's the Atlanta Thrashers moving to Winnipeg. No offense to a burgeoning hockey market, which might have been a burgeoning hockey market if that team would have won a little bit more. A great what if in the history of the NHL. But Atlanta got two cracks at it. The Atlanta Flames, which moved to Calgary, and the Atlanta Thrashers, which shipped on up to Winnipeg a few years back. And I don't think several people, many thousand people in the Atlanta area probably never even noticed that they left. So, oh well. Sorry, Chargers fans. But there are some aspects of it that I am interested to see with this move to L.A. Hey, L.A., it's up to you now. You have two NFL teams, once again, like you used to with the Raiders and the Rams. Thanks for listening to GikesGotGame back here in Pittsburgh, PA. Thanks to Brian Crawford for producing. Thank you for listening and watching. This is Matt Geica reminding you that when the radio fades, you know life's moving fast. I'll talk to you next week, same time, same channel, right here on the River's Edge.